All right, let's dive right into this explainer by jumping directly into a seriously high-stakes moment in northern Gaza, where a literal ticking clock has just stopped. Today, we're unpacking a massive story of espionage, retaliation, and the immense, messy complexities of targeted intelligence operations. So, picture this for a second. It's a quiet afternoon in the Palestinian village of Beit Lahia. A highly sought-after target named Yahya Ayash, a guy widely known in intelligence circles as the engineer, is just sitting in a room making a phone call. He's using a Motorola cell phone provided by his childhood friend, completely unaware that the device is actually rigged. High above that very house, an Israeli Air Force plane intercepts the phone's signal. The audio is instantly beamed over to Mossad's southern regional headquarters. Down there, a voice expert with headphones on is listening intently. The room is dead silent. Finally, the expert points up and says, "It's him, 100% sure." And with that exact confirmation, an agent immediately presses a remote detonator. Now, what's really wild about this operation is the sheer micro-level precision involved. That detonator was meant to trigger just 50 grams of explosives, intricately packed inside that tiny Motorola phone. The goal was entirely surgical, meaning they wanted to eliminate the target without harming a single other person in that house. But the agent presses the button, and absolutely nothing happens. He presses it again. Still nothing. The target is just sitting there, still talking. The bomb actually failed due to a technical glitch. And that leaves us with a massive question, right? How on earth did we get to this failed assassination attempt? And who exactly was on the other end of that line? Let's look at the Oslo Accords and the violent backlash that followed. To really understand the ticking bomb in that phone, we have to zoom way out to the monumental signing of the 1993 Oslo Accords. There was this incredibly deep divide in Israel at the time. On one side, you had Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who saw the Accords as a necessary, albeit painful step for peace. He was hoping the newly formed Palestinian Authority would curb militant activity. But on the flip side, large segments of the public and intelligence agencies like Mossad and Shin Bet were terrified. They feared that withdrawing from these territories was essentially just going to create safe havens for militants and invite more attacks. And unfortunately, those intelligence fears became a reality just a year later. On October 19, 1994, a devastating suicide bombing on a bus in Tel Aviv claimed 22 lives, including 21 Israeli soldiers. This horrific event was a real turning point. It became the primary catalyst for a wave of targeted retaliations. Which brings us to Operation Golden Beehive. That Tel Aviv bus bombing led Mossad directly to a man named Fatih Shikaki, the founder of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Now, Shikaki had fled Gaza back in 1988 and was operating comfortably out of Damascus, Syria, heavily funded by outside nations. He actually got so bold that he openly detailed his attack planning in a Time magazine interview. Well, that interview was the final straw. It prompted Prime Minister Rabin to sign his red page, which effectively authorized his immediate assassination. But here's the logistical nightmare. Striking in Syria was completely out of the question because it risked derailing the ongoing peace talks. So Mossad had to track Shikaki's incredibly complex international travel route. He'd fly from Damascus to Malta, then over to Tunisia, where he'd rent a luxury car and drive 480 miles to Tripoli, Libya, all to meet with Muammar Gaddafi. Mossad literally just had to wait patiently for him to make this exact trip. So they tracked his return trip from Libya, and Mossad agents executed a flawless, minute-by-minute operation right in Malta. After Shikaki checked into room 616 at the Diplomat Hotel and went out shopping at a Marks & Spencer, a Mossad agent named Jerry transmitted the operation's code phrase, "Honey is flowing." At exactly 1:15 p.m., hitmen on a motorcycle approached him, fired a silenced pistol, and completely vanished into the Mediterranean via a speedboat that was waiting to take them to an Israeli Navy missile boat. Now for the political twist, the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. Following the success of Golden Beehive, Rabin authorized a massive intelligence sweep, targeting other key militant leaders. But he found himself living in this incredibly jarring dual reality. On one hand, he's actively ordering strikes to protect his fragile peace process. On the other hand, he's simultaneously facing intense, very dangerous backlash from right-wing extremists within Israel who viewed his concessions as absolute treason. Then came a twist that stunned the entire world. On November 4th, 1995, just after speaking to a massive crowd of 100,000 supporters in Tel Aviv, Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. But he wasn't killed by a foreign militant. He was shot in the back by an Israeli law student named Yigal Amir. It was a singular moment that completely paralyzed the nation. Which leads into Operation Crystal's lethal call. In the wake of Rabin's death, the new prime minister, Shimon Peres, launched Operation Crystal. This renewed the focus on the primary architect of the ongoing bombings, Yahya Ayash. But remember, the engineer was a total phantom. He had completely abandoned landlines and personal cell phones. He never spent 2 consecutive nights in the same place, and he maintained a level of extreme paranoia. Mossad really had to look for the absolute tiniest crack in his armor. So, how do you catch a ghost? Well, Mossad discovered Ayash occasionally visited his childhood friend, Osama. They then found out that Osama's uncle, Kamal, desperately wanted a U.S. visa. Mossad intercepts Kamal, promises him a green card, and essentially tricks him into delivering a Motorola phone to his nephew. Kamal was told it was just a bugged phone so they could listen in on conversations. He had absolutely no idea it contained that 50-gram explosive we talked about earlier. And that brings us right back to our opening scene. After that initial detonator failure back in October, Kamal was actually instructed to retrieve the phone, just claiming it needed some routine repairs. The phone was covertly handed over to Shin Bet, fixed up in their lab, and quietly returned to the house. This perfectly set the stage for the second attempt on January 5, 1996. At 9 a.m. on that January morning, Ayash's father called the rigged phone. As he spoke these exact, highly emotional words to his son, "How are you? I miss you a lot." The Mossad voice expert definitively confirmed Ayash's voice. The agent pressed the detonator. This time, there was no malfunction. The explosive neutralized Ayash instantly. The final section, the cycle of retaliation. Now, taking out the engineer was a massive, highly calculated tactical victory for Israel, seemingly closing a horrific chapter. When you look at the sheer scale of the attacks attributed to Ayash between 1993 and 1995, he was directly responsible for organizing 9 attacks that killed 56 people and injured nearly 400 more. But here's the catch. His death absolutely did not end the violence. Actually, his funeral in the West Bank drew an astonishing 100,000 attendees. So instead of dismantling the network, this massive mourning period acted as an enormous recruitment drive, allowing Hamas to quickly bring in a whole new wave of operatives. The immediate aftermath was defined by a truly chilling promise from a Hamas spokesperson, warning that the assassination would only invite unprecedented retaliation. And tragically, they made good on that threat, launching a new, devastating wave of bombings in the months that followed. So, as we wrap up this explainer, all of this history leaves us grappling with a really dark, persistent question about the nature of this conflict. Does neutralizing a high-value target actually stop the violence, or does it merely guarantee the next devastating chapter? It's a heavy question, for sure, but understanding the intricate mechanics of operations like Crystal and Golden Beehive is absolutely essential to grasp in the larger picture here. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep asking the tough questions.